Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, AT Sex and Sexuality. My name is Tom, and I'm representing Tech Owl, and I'm accompanied by Scout.
Hi, I'm Scout, and I am from the Missouri Tech Act program.
So before we get started for this pre-recording, we want to say that we will be describing all of the images in this PowerPoint for you all. The image above this description is a woman who is using a screen reader on their phone. Secondly, like all YouTube videos, there's going to be captions present, closed captions that you can just press the CC button on the screen to be able to see those captions. And the image literally is a CC button with the words show captions under it. And lastly, be yourself. If you need to take time to step away from the screen, please feel welcome to. The image representing this is a person who has a fidget in their hands. If you need any more accessibility to receive this information, please email info@cfilc.org. A few things to consider. Whoopsies. You got it, Scout. Right.
We are giving you a content warning. Basically, we are going to have a discussion of sexuality, of sex toys and devices, and some sensitive topics related to sexuality and disability. So like Tom said in the last slide, take care of yourself. If this feels too much, you can pause or stop, leave this webinar or come back at a later date. But we are going to kind of talk openly. And feel free to take what you learned from this presentation and talk about it with others. We will not be having other people share, so there won't really be much for you to worry about confidentiality-wise. And this is, we are recording this without an audience. So, there's nothing that you have to worry about except taking care of yourself.
So the outline of the information that we'll be sharing will first be kind of a broad understanding of what is assistive technology. We'll go into the intersection between assistive technology and sexuality as a concept. And then we're going to finalize the presentation with an interesting conversation around devices and show you many examples of devices that could be assistive in the bedroom. And lastly, we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. The image on this slide is of a person in a wheelchair looking over the shoulder of another person, I think holding a tablet or something of that nature. I believe they're on a date. So to introduce myself, my name is Tom. I work out of the Pennsylvania Assistive Technology Act program called Tech Owl PA. I'm the Senior Assistive Technology Program Coordinator. My email's on the screen. My email is thomasd@temple.edu. And the image that I have chose to represent me, the headshot, is of me drinking yerba mate, which is an Argentinian tea, at the top of a mountain in Peru somewhere.
And I am Scout Mary. Like I said, I work at the AT program in Missouri. We just call it Missouri Assistive Technology. My email is and my last name, Mary, MERRY, @mo-at.org. And I just chose a random image of a clothes in a chair with a hat. I am a Caucasian guy with a short beard. All right.
Perfect. Again, on the screen, we have a little bit about both of our assistive technology programs. Tech Owl representing Pennsylvania, obviously. Our website is techowlpa.org.
And our website is at.mo.gov. And if you'd like to find your state center or any state center, you can visit AT3 Center, which is AT3 center.net.
Perfect.
I think this was something I was doing. So we are want to recognize some disability language. So we will use person first language. Disability is something that a person has rather than who they are. But we also want to acknowledge that some people choose identity first language, and we may also use that, which is the disability is part of what makes that person who they are. And so they claim identity first. And it is what connects folks to a culture or history. For instance, somebody who's deaf might identify as deaf. Somebody with diabetes might not want to identify as diabetic, but a person with diabetes.
Yes, so in this presentation, we will use them interchangeably as our beautiful disabled community often does. And yeah, to reflect the needs of our community. So first, why does assistive technology matter? What's it all about? We believe that assistive technology promotes independence. On the screen, there is an image of a TikTok video that I created a couple of years ago, actually now. And on the screen, it is of a 3D printed device, and someone's hands are trying to open a bottle with this little device. And on the screen, it says, if you see something and you're not sure why it exists, the next slide is, it might help someone with a disability. Oftentimes, we see these devices out there, and sometimes we're like, what is this? Why does that exist? Can't you just use your hands? And in some cases, that's not the case. Sometimes we need a device to be able to open a jar. We need a device to be able to hold a pen. And we believe that everyone has the right to be able to have independence. And the conversations that'll come from this presentation will be around independence with intimate acts, whether that be self-pleasure, pleasuring ourselves through masturbation, whether that be having intercourse with another person or with several other people. If devices are needed, we encourage that independence. We encourage the ability to express yourself and express your needs, however that might be. Additionally, yes, we're going to talk about the difference between services and devices, but I interrupted Scout. This is Scout's slide.
Yeah, we just want to make clear that assistive technology is kind of an umbrella that covers both devices and services. And so the definition of each is the definition of device is any item or piece of equipment, however you get it, as long as it is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capacity of somebody with a disability. So it's really kind of anything that helps with functional capacity. The service is really any service that assists with selection, acquiring, or use of a device. So lots of things don't need that service, but sometimes even this presentation could be a service because we are helping you learn about and perhaps use a device for pleasure.
Wonderful. So let's play a game. Is this assistive technology? The image on the screen is of a flashlight, automatic flashlight with automatic buttons on the top. There is a start button, there's a minus button, a plus button, and a number screen. So I think we can all agree that an automatic flashlight might actually help someone who has a penis to achieve an orgasm, especially if that person does not have the ability to masturbate themselves. This is a device that could absolutely help someone experience an orgasm without hurting themselves or without having any pain points or pressure points. So this absolutely could be an assistive technology for someone who might not have the ability to masturbate themselves alone or has pain doing it.
All right, how about this one? So is this assistive technology? And on the screen is an image of a roll of black tape. This tape is actually bondage tape. And so bondage tape will adhere to itself, but not adhere to skin. So this is a very safe product to use anywhere on your body, as long as you're not cutting off circulation. But I would say yes, this is also assistive technology. This is something that can help with positioning. It can help with different sensations, and so for a variety of reasons, this is also in our category of assistive technology.
Great. So now let's talk about AT and sexuality. Before this conversation gets started, I think it's important to understand the qualifications of the presenters. Neither of us, our counselors, or sex therapists, that is a specific type of qualifications and degrees that neither of us hold. However, both of us have led many discussions regarding assistive technology, sex, and disability. In addition, I hold a degree in gender, sexuality, and women's studies, as well as I am a professor of gender, sexuality, and women's studies at Temple University. So I lead classes on feminist theory, as well as disability studies and sex. We both are people with experience using assistive technology, whether that be for our personal needs or as more in a professional role, as well as using assistive technology in intimate settings. Some considerations, as you probably have noticed throughout this presentation thus far, and as will continue to be true, we are going to be using accurate, anatomically correct terminologies when referring to the body. So words like penis and vulva and clitoris. In addition, for sexual participation, so that might be masturbation, sex, penetration. So just word for the wise that we are going to be continuing to use in a very serious manner all of these terminologies to describe assistive technology and sex. So to begin the conversation of sexuality, there's no better way to start than to discuss the circle of sexuality. The circle of sexuality is a model that was created in the 80s by a person named Dennis Daly. This model is a great starting point to give a really well-rounded understanding of what sexuality is by taking 5 different yet overlapping circles within the whole concept of sexuality that makes up all the areas of our life and experiences that we go through. And they will eventually tie in to culminate into our own unique experience of sexuality. These circles being sensuality, intimacy, sexual orientation and gender identity, sexual health and reproductive health, sexual behaviors and practices. In the center of this, we see the term power and choice. This is because at the center of our sexuality and our sexual expression, we all have the agency of choice as well as our own self-power. The beauty of this topic area is that it reflects all about the human experience. We all know that as disability advocates, disability is a part of the human experience, just as much as sexuality is a part of the human experience.
I think Tim is there. You can just drop him on my desk.
For this purpose, we are going to be organizing this section of the presentation around the circles of sexuality. And we're going to be beginning first with Scout talking about sensuality.
Okay, so we are starting with sensuality because we both feel this is an important piece. All the pieces tie in, but if we think about experiencing an act through our senses, whether that be touch or taste or just visually experiencing, hearing or smelling, intimate acts really do involve a lot of our senses. This is also the awareness of our bodies and our comfort levels, enjoying someone else's body and experiencing time with them, letting them enjoy their senses, whether it's touch or anything. But we are really having that interplay between senses of our own and others' bodies.
So next we have intimacy. The image on the screen is of two people cuddling. One person is kissing the other person's nose. Intimacy is defined as a feeling of closeness with another person. Sensuality, as Scout mentioned, talks mostly about the physical senses of closeness, and whereas intimacy addresses the emotional closeness. This is often addressed through conversations of caring for a person, sharing emotions for a person, as well as holding space for their joy as well as their pain. We can't have intimacy without emotional vulnerability, and we can't have intimacy without reciprocity. So this means that each person needs to be emotionally vulnerable to achieve a level of intimacy. Regarding intimacy and disability, it's very important to respect that there are many levels of shame and stigma around sex, disability, and the use of assistive technologies. By supporting and encouraging sex-positive conversations around the use of assistive technology in the bedroom, we are hoping to lessen the stigma around this incredibly human experience of disability and sexuality in the context of sexuality.
That last picture is one of my favorites of our presentation.
Isn't it the cutest one? I love it.
We now want to tie in our sexual identity and disability. So, so when we think about sexual identity, I think, it is not uncommon in our society to think of male and female, masculine and feminine, gay and straight, to put it on these opposite ends or just 2 points. But really, if we can think about ourselves and where we fall maybe on the spectrum of sexuality, of gender identity, of all the places that we can be and who we can be and how we can experience things, I think it leads to a healthier view of ourselves and on our partners, that we may be getting to know, and what makes them comfortable, what makes them feel good. Do they want to be more vulnerable? Does somebody want to take a dominant role in something that might not be what they do in their daily lives? But really looking at all those interplays of identity, and knowing that it's all okay. Just because your family does things one way, it doesn't mean that has to be your way to identify. And disability really can come into that with some family pressures, and even just finding partners. So, those are all things to take into consideration, to be really aware of, and to have discussions about with partners.
And now we turn to, I think, our fourth circle, which is sexual behavior and practices. On the screen, we have an image of a person standing and leaning over to kiss someone who is sitting in a wheelchair. The second image we have on the screen says consent, with an image of fries that say "I heart fries," which the acronym FRI stands for freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So as I continue to say through this presentation, sexuality is a part of the human experience. Sexual behavior is a part of the human experience. Sexual behavior is as beautiful as it is powerful and needs to be handled with seriousness and care, especially when regarding sexual behavior and disability. What I mean to say is that there's an unfortunate trend where teens with disabilities and people with disabilities in general are not being given the information or the appropriate privacy to explore their sexuality freely. I've heard horror stories of people being restrained or punished for having sexual urges as young as 14 and as old as even 30 or 40. When sexuality and human nature, like sexual behaviors, are ignored, and these conversations are just put under the rug, we run into significantly larger issues in adulthood where people who are absolutely not given any information about sexuality, their sexual pleasure, and natural sexual behaviors are going into adulthood unable to understand this and then acting inappropriately. And people ask why. It's because we're not having these conversations when we need to be having these conversations, and we are not supporting people with disabilities to understand that these human actions, this human nature is appropriate. It's not only appropriate, it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and we all deserve to be able to express that. So the reason why on this screen I have the word consent is because this is one of the biggest issues that we run into when talking about statistics of people with disabilities, is that sometimes people don't understand that they can consent or what consent even is. And sometimes that consent is the other way around. A person doesn't understand sexual boundaries, so how are they going to understand that they need to gain consent to be able to express their sexual behavior? So it's important as a foundation of sexual behavior to understand consent. That consent is freely given, that consent is reversible, it is informed, it is enthusiastic, and it is specific. And if it is none of those things, then we cannot have consent.
All right. Now we come to our last circle, which is sexual and reproductive health. I'm sorry, I failed to describe my last image, which was of rainbow stairs and folks climbing up them. So this image on the screen is of 3 folks of various skin tones, all intently looking at a book that is titled Health and Sex. And so sexual and reproductive health, especially for folks with disabilities, can be a tough topic because, like Tom said, the education is so frequently just not there. But the fact is that any person with any disability still absolutely has the right to discuss family planning and access to birth control. When I first started this topic, my boss said that no doctor ever talked to her about family planning until she was almost 40 years old. And the first doctor that brought it up to her nearly made her cry, just because somebody was just talking about it. But another really important piece, and again, something that can be completely neglected for folks with disabilities, is caring for our own bodies, specifically when it comes to our sex parts. So how to keep everything clean, when to talk to somebody when something goes wrong, but having that really open conversation is so critical, and being able to talk to doctors. I have heard that it is often not even considered that a person with a disability might have a sexually transmitted disease, and they'll look at 16 other things before saying, oh, right, maybe it's a sexually transmitted disease. Or they might be pregnant, and the doctors aren't even considering that when they're trying to figure out what's going on. But also that sexual behaviors can have health consequences, like the STDs, like pregnancy. And the idea that folks with disabilities aren't going to have sex, to me, is so antiquated. And so we really need to talk about that birth control and caring for our bodies for everyone.
So we found a really incredible recent Twitter post that I think reflects a lot of the conversations that we're having. And this one is written by Andrew Gurza. And it states, I hate my sexuality as a severely disabled person a lot of the time. I hate it. I feel like it's a bird that has its wings clipped and can never, ever come out of its cage, can never truly be free. Sometimes I wish I didn't feel sexual at all. Disabled people's sexuality often gets removed from their personhood, and that has harmful effects on the disabled person's view of themselves, and we need to explore that more. I think this beautifully sums up the reason why having a conversation like this is so drastically important, but not only that, that the fact that this conversation still is not happening nearly at the scale that it needs to happen, that across the board, people with disabilities are not only not given the appropriate information to understand sex, sexuality, and consent, but oftentimes they're discouraged to even think of themselves as a sexual being, which is absolutely not the case. Sexuality, just like disability, is all a part of the human experience. And it is a fact of life. And we all need to not only get over whatever stigma that we have, but it's something that needs to be celebrated because it's just so beautiful. So I appreciate Andrew Gurza for sharing this incredibly real, incredibly valid emotion on Twitter, to just reify and reinforce the fact that we need to continue to have these levels of conversations across the board in all disciplines, not just assistive technology and not just disability. So now, in this part of the presentation, we're going to be having a lot of fun talking about the devices, the fun things, the things that we're all here for. And I believe, Scout, you're starting us off?
I think so. Yeah, so some important considerations is that what we've talked about does involve some abstract thinking and some problem solving, but I would say even most importantly, the kind of what we have talked about up to this time really reflects the needs for communication. I do think we have to be honest with ourselves about what we want and what we desire. We have to be open and honest with partners, as well as any needed caregivers or doctors. So anyway, you know, we've talked about this need for thinking and communicating. We're also going to make some assumptions that folks have some form of sexual education, and that for this next piece, that there is some economic access to purchase devices. Nothing is covered. There are a couple of exceptions, but basically nothing is covered by you know, any insurance or any other funding source that I know of.
Yes, absolutely. And these considerations, I think, continue throughout this presentation. Sometimes we have to put on our thinking caps and our problem-solving caps to really see something as assistive and see the full kind of like use case. But don't worry, we will absolutely be providing some context. So expectations to have for this part of the presentation about devices is that this is just an introduction. We're going to be talking a little bit in the abstract. I think we're going to be talking about device types, grip types, not necessarily recommending any specific product. We never want to recommend any specific product, since there are just so many options out there, and also so many use cases, so many needs, so many people's personal limitations and personal things that they do really well. So we just want to talk about types of things. Everything that we're going to be showing here can be commercially available. It is commercially available, can be purchased. Also, I encourage, like, if you are going to be looking up some of these devices or adjacent devices, to understand that some of the websites that you might be searching through, some of the packaging you might receive or materials may have explicit content, pornographic content specifically. And if that is something that you're a little bit unwary about and things like that, so just please, go forward with caution, knowing that you might encounter some pornographic imagery or imagery that you might consider a little bit not rated PG, for example. On the screen, we have a woman in a wheelchair, and they are searching on their laptop, probably for some of the sex toys that we're about to be sharing with you all today. So the first category, the device category that we're going to be talking about the device categories, I'm sorry, that we're going to be talking about today are 4. We're going to be talking about communication, we're going to be talking about positioning, pleasure, and we're going to end off with cleanup and aftercare. The image on the screen is of a person smelling some aroma, sitting in a wheelchair next to a beautiful lush plant. That aroma may be, setting the mood for later on that day. Who knows? And our first content area is communication. So when we are talking about communication, we have some considerations. So first, that consent is communicated and can be renegotiated at any point. So understanding that we need to figure out how we access communication and where that access is very important for the renegotiation of consent if needed. Also respecting each other's communication barriers and needs in that given moment and in many different moments within that interaction. Also that a safe word is not only established, but accessible and agreed upon prior to engaging in any intimate acts. The image on the screen is of 2 people, one person sitting in a power chair, and behind that person is another person with their arms around their shoulder, giving them a hug. So devices that we have for communication. First, we have alternative lighting as just a general topic. The image on the screen has several different types of alternative lighting. I think a window's open with like a sheer curtain. There is a desk lamp. There's a floor lamp. There is string lights, like holiday string lights around a beautifully upholstered couch. So in this image, we have multiple different types of lighting. It's important to understand that people that do not use words sometimes use their hands to communicate. They'll use ASL, for example. Additionally, a person who might not use their voice to speak could use their facial expression and their body language to communicate pleasure, pain, consent even. It's important to have the ability to see oneself and to augment that communication, especially if that person does not use words, or you are not a person that can hear words. To have the ability to have multiple forms of communication with our body language, our facial expressions, our hands, and things, or imagery, augmentative communication devices, and things of that nature. The second device on the screen is augmentative and alternative communication, also known as AAC. It's important, if a person is non-speaking and they use augmentative communication as their voice, to be able to find a way to have that integrated, whether that be on a nightstand next to the person, having that easy access to be able to speak. If your access method is touching the screen, to have that. If not, if you're using switch scanning or some other type of access to that augmentative communication device, to have that 100% readily available, pre-negotiated, and completely accessible during the whole encounter. The third image we have on the screen is foam noise pads, which is a device that you can put in your room to mute sound. As we might know, sometimes sexual encounters are loud, and that's totally normal and natural and also fun. But a big aspect of disability and sexuality that I am very passionate about is privacy. Giving people the privacy to explore themselves, explore their bodies, explore their sexuality is super important. So foam pads are not only useful for a person to kind of like limit sound if they're having intercourse with a partner, but also by themselves. If they are using assistive devices and they don't really want someone to hear them experiment with themselves and their body, having foam pads in the room to limit that sound could be an accessibility feature. Lastly, having a safe word. The image on the screen is of like little Scrabble characters, I believe, that say safe. They spell out the word safe. So to have safe words or a safe communication, whether that be a movement, it could be an item that you touch, to just establish how you are going to communicate safety is absolutely incredibly important when engaging in intercourse, especially with another person or multiple people. So I'm passing off to Scout to talk about positioning.
All right, so our next category is positioning. And some of the things to consider when we're thinking about positioning are, we really want all people to be comfortable and be confident going into any intimate activity. So we look for a position where somebody has the greatest freedom of movement, if that's what they want. But we want to get our supports in place and really talk about and think about positioning. There's some of the research that we've done, and people are like, yeah, everybody says that spontaneous sex is the best, but the reality is that when you plan, it doesn't change the act. So when you plan out what time of day you're going to do this, even what day you're going to have sex, then you can be prepared for all these potential needs or setup. So there can be different positioning for different acts, and you might need different supports for each of those. You might look at positions for self-pleasure, with a partner, all those different pieces. You want people to be, like I said, comfortable, secure, because what you want to be able to do is take in the experience and not be focused on like, oh, I'm not positioned properly. So another really important piece of positioning is the pressure and pain points. So know that some activities, are more forceful and can put more pressure on different parts of your body. And so being aware of that and positioning properly so that you have the best outcomes is always important. All right, let's look at some devices. Oh, and there's an image on the screen of two people sitting on a couch, and there's a woman in front, and she's wearing dark glasses, so she may be blind, and it does look like they are exploring a Braille book. All right, so some devices that are on the screen now for positioning are a wedge ring-up combo. So this is just a large wedge and a small wedge, which are really very versatile. So somebody could lay over it or on it, or you could even put something on top of you. So having all this variety in these two pieces can be very handy. Below the wedge ramp combo is a wedge, and we have the wedge listed as $89. So this is the Liberator brand. You can get wedge pillows for much less expensive. These are the high density foam, and they do come with a very nicely textured outer cover that is waterproof and machine washable. So all these will have a washable, waterproof cover, which I think is smart. But you do not have to spend that much money on the wedges. You might already have them, and later on you'll see a waterproof throw. So that's another option of using these. There is the sensual sex lounge chair, which I do love because you can position in such a variety of ways. There are two optional pillows on this picture. But also you can throw it out in your living room and your guests can sit on it after you've washed it as a piece of furniture. The last image on the screen, that is a double curve. It just has very generous curves. And I don't know exactly how wide it is, probably about 18 or 20 inches wide. The last image is of just a kind of little ski slopey wedge, foam wedge with a cutout that holds a magic wand vibrator. This one is something that someone could sit on and have that vibrator accessible to them to stimulate their clitoris. You could, stimulate any body part you want. The thing I like about the toy mount is you could actually pick it up because the foam is very light and position it where you need it. There's lots of ways to use these positioning devices. I think we have one more slide of devices we'll run through. So,
yeah.
We talked a lot about information that people get or don't get when they have a disability. And I think one of the things that I also think about is somebody who acquires a spinal cord injury and who is talking to them about how to proceed with intimacy after a spinal cord injury. Well, I'll tell you, the folks who developed the Intimate Writer are folks who were talking about intimacy and sex after a spinal cord injury. So there is a black chair and this device with a little bit of upper body rocking. Sorry, it just started raining really hard here. With a little bit of upper body rocking can produce that thrusting movement. And the rider mate, which is just basically a cot, all that does is position the partner at the right height. And so you can get it with or without that. But the Intimate Rider is really helpful for folks with paraplegia or quadriplegia. Below this is a multifunctional positioning sex chair. This is just a metal steel frame, and it has two straps that are bouncy, and it has a handle in the front. So somebody could sit on this. Generally, I haven't seen one with a bar underneath, because in other ones you can sit under, somebody could be underneath. Maybe somebody with a penis could be underneath, and somebody would be above who wants to receive that in a variety of ways. You could also sit on this, for oral sex. There's just it is multi-position. Any way you can think of using it, it can be useful. And then the next two images on the screen are of a power wheelchair and a Hoyer lift. Now, these are things, of course, are frequently covered as needed through insurance. The thing I think about with a power wheelchair is if this is a comfortable place for you to be, then it might be a comfortable place for you to give or receive sexual pleasure, even if it's yourself. But the important things to remember when you're using your device like this for intimacy is never exceed the weight limit. Make sure you are in a safe place with everything off, so that you are not accidentally hitting your wheelchair and moving, and that you're not positioning yourself or even with a partner as to cause anything to tip. So it's, you can position against a wall or something like that. Same with the Hoyer lift. You never want to exceed the weight limit. The thing I always think about with the Hoyer lift is, what if you put the non-disabled partner in the Hoyer lift and engage in intimacy in a just slightly turned around way? So anyway, all things that can be used.
Awesome. The only thing I want to add to this as well is size inclusivity. Regarding positioning devices, sometimes we run into some areas where things aren't 100% size inclusive. I do have to say that there is a weight limit on the intimate rider and riding mate, as well as the multifunctional positioning chair. Whereas
Yes.
wheelchairs and Hoyer lifts, the amazing thing about both of them is that they're designed for your body. And if you are a person of a certain weight, where you would need something to be size inclusive, that wheelchair and that Hoyer lift should be calibrated to your weight. So when considering size inclusive positioning devices as well, I'm always a big fan of like your wheelchair is meant like fit for your body. Like there's nothing sexier than being comfortable in my in my opinion. And so also just to throw out size inclusivity here, I think those are two really great size inclusive alternatives for positioning devices for intimate acts. But moving
Just
on.
don't go over the weight limit
Nope.
with a
Yeah,
friend.
we don't want to with a friend. Exactly. That's a good point. The next section we have is stimulation. So we're going to be talking a little bit about grip size and adjustability, variation in controls. So whether something is app-based controls or has like more manual buttons, some size and shape differences, the areas that we're going to be using them, if something has a remote control, as well as body safe materials. The image on the screen that we have is of a person with their back turned to us holding beautiful flowers with a prosthetic arm. So first, we're going to be talking about devices for stimulation for internal use. And so mostly dildo or butt plug type of devices. First, we have this on the left, we have an anal toy with a ring handle. This is just a traditional butt plug. However, the handle of the butt plug is a ring, which just the ring is the assistive part of this device. There are multiple different ways to have butt plugs. Some butt plugs have full tails. Some butt plugs don't have any handle at all, and it goes directly onto the anus. Whereas this one, the ring could help someone take that out. So just considering a different type of handle for a butt plug or an anal insertion toy. Also, we have a dildo with a large handle. It's important that whenever using any type of insertable device, that there is either a ring or a lip to be able to catch the device so that it doesn't go in and you can't get it out. So as you see here, not only does this dildo have a large handle, but it also has a buffer ring, just so that you don't go too far in, as well as it going in and then not coming out. The third image on the screen we have is an Escra 2 app-controlled insertable vibe. So this is a app-controlled vibrator, which is very cool. You can control it on your phone, or another partner could have access to control this vibrator on their phone, or partners, multiple people, who knows. And lastly, we have an image on the screen of a dildo extender. We actually were in contact with this company. They are called TouchBot, and they have this lattice extender, and they wanted to promote a 20% discount for whoever watches this video. So if you go to TouchBot's website and buy this device, type in lattice when you can type in a discount code, and you'll get 20% off. So this is an extender where you can place the dildo, or you can purchase the dildo through the company and put it on the extender so that you're able to insert a dildo in either your vulva or in your anus, because sometimes that reaching motion is difficult. Like if you don't have the range of motion or the strength in that compromised position to be able to insert something. So this is a handle that will be able to extend for you to be able to use a dildo.
All right, and I think I'm doing external devices, so more devices for stimulation. And so these are all devices that we would use on the clitoris or on a penis. And the first one we have on the screen is called a finger vibe. And I like these because they're super inexpensive. You can get them, I've even seen them for $8. So they just fit over your finger. And so basically any place you can reach, you can stimulate, which I think is just kind of easy. There's no grip required once it's on your finger. This one is a little bit, this one was one of the higher ends. It has little like rabbit ears on the end of it. Specific, I mean, you could use it anywhere, but it is designed for a clitoris. The Jules Volta is another external vibrator. This one has a nice rounded handle. Again, this would be primarily, it is a kind of a blue device with a black handle, primarily designed to be a clitoral stimulator. Also really inexpensive at $9. The next image on the screen is like a barrel-shaped device and a cell phone. So this is a Bluetooth masturbator, and they come with there's a wide variety of this style of device. So this would go on a penis. And the thing I like, so it can have multiple different vibration patterns and strengths and all of that, but it can all be controlled from an app, much like the Esca 2, which is a vibrator that can be controlled with an app. So when I think about this, I think about somebody who has a caregiver could place this device, or many different devices, and then leave the room, and then the person then has the privacy and the control to start and stop using that device as long as they can access their phone. So with either of those, that internal or external type of vibrators or masturbators, I think that that access point is really nice. And then the Starzy Vibe is another external vibrator that is meant to go on a clitoris, although I don't see why it couldn't go on a penis. And this is a rechargeable device. One thing I will say about rechargeables, especially if they're waterproof, is they can be hard to plug in the chargers. So that is something kind of to think about. It's great when devices are waterproof, but always check that. But the rechargeables, they have basically self-sealing holes. And so to get that charger in there takes some practice. Anything else you want to say about bees, Tom?
Great, yeah. I do want to add about the Starzy Vibe is, as you see, it looks like a star. On the other end, it's rounded. It's designed to, where other clitoral vibrators are either like in the shape of a wand, like the Wanda that we saw on a previous slide, or some of them like the Jules Volta, they have like a handle. This one, it's designed so that you use the palm of your hand. So it's actually designed to be adaptive. To use the palm of your hand to place it over your vulva where your clitoris would be, and to activate the clitoral stimulation through that. However, I also see an extra level of adaptation where if you don't have the ability to hold anything over your clitoris, that you would be able to just lay on this device. So there are multiple ways that we could utilize all of these devices, and I just think the most independence, the better. A lot of ways that we can, pleasure ourselves independently. So the last part of this section will be support devices for stimulation. The first device on the screen is the O-nut penetration buffer ring. So like I had mentioned in a previous slide about having a dildo with kind of like an O-ring, basically to ensure you're not going too far. If that doesn't exist on that specific dildo or device that you're using, the insertable device, or if you're having sex with a person, they're using either their fingers or they're using their penis to insert inside of you, but you know that you can only go a certain distance inside your body and feel pleasure rather than pain, the O-nut buffer ring can act as that O-ring buffer on a penis or on someone's finger so that you're not going too far in and hurt yourself. So that is a really great device. I'm a big fan. Also, If you are a person who wants to insert a dildo in someone else, there are toy harnesses that you can use, and there are many different body parts that you can use a toy harness. You could, on the screen, we have this toy harnesses on someone's thigh. You can put that over your pelvic area if you have that free range of motion there. And if you want to insert a dildo in that harness, you can also strap it on your arm. You can strap it, sometimes they have them for over your face. There are multiple ways where you can strap a dildo onto your body through like a toy harness like that. And I encourage this because if you have free range of motion, for example, in your leg, but you might not have that same range of motion in your arms, that independence is really important. And so absolutely use a strap on your leg versus a different part of your body that you don't nearly have as much control over. And then the last thing on this slide, we have our skin safe bondage tape, which Scott talked about earlier in our previous slide, but I think it's really important to talk about bondage tape, not only in a kink positive way. I think it's important for people to explore kink if that's something that they would like to do. But this device also is great for a person who might not have control over certain body parts or maybe a limb. And maybe that person might feel more comfortable having that restricted or tied down. There's a level of sensual intimacy and vulnerability as well to being restrained. So this is just an option for us as well regarding support devices for stimulation.
So actually two quick notes on the toy harness. So I just wanted to note language. So it does refer to, the harness is not a toy, but they are referring to the devices as toys. It is just kind of an industry-wide way that these devices are talked about. It does not, in my mind, indicate that these are child's play or that they are less significant than having sexual interactions without a device. And I also think the harness is fantastic for when somebody can't have pressure on certain areas, but they can have pressure on other areas. So, if I have a partner on top of me and, they might want to receive, insertion from a dildo with a lot of force, and my leg can handle that, but maybe some other place cannot. So.
Great, thanks so much. That was a great clarification. And the last section we have here is cleanup and aftercare, which is really fun. So some considerations for this is that whether a device is sensitive to water or not. So being very secure that we are not damaging any devices that we have because of water or fluids that are produced during sex. Additionally, having access to a bathroom is a really important consideration. The vibe, the environment, the ambiance that we're creating, as well as people's personal needs before, during, and after that intimate experience, whether that be by yourself or with others. The image on the screen is of a person brushing their teeth. Their caregiver is providing that service and they are brushing their teeth for them. So now we're going to start with the first part of this section about cleanup and aftercare with more like cleaning and sanitation stuff. So the first image that we have on the screen is wipes. So wipies, they make skin sensitive ones. They also make Clorox wipes, whichever one works best for you. But sometimes sex and intimacy can be a little bit messy, especially if you're using lubricant for toys, which highly recommend. Please use lubricant for toys. But when you're finished, sometimes it can be sticky. And so getting a wipe to cleaning things off, or if you're having sex and something happens, it's important to just have some wipies nearby. In the same conversation with your toys, you should also ensure that when you're done using your toys, especially those that you're inserting into your body, that you clean them. So this is just a toy cleaner that we found, but there are many different types of toy cleaners you could use. And lastly, we have waterproofing. So we have two different devices. We have a waterproof sheet set, which you can purchase. It's like a reusable sheet set. And then the second one, we have our disposable incontinence pads. If investing in a waterproof sheet set just is not in the cards right now. It's a little bit expensive. It can go range from 40 to 200. That's not in the cards. You can always try disposable incontinence pads, see if you like them. So those are both really great options, especially if you're having sex in your wheelchair, and not all wheelchairs are waterproof. And so ensuring that you are making sure that all electronic aspects of your wheelchair are covered and waterproofed so that, God forbid, you don't damage your chair. That's a very important device in your life.
Yeah, or the cushion.
Or the cushion. Yeah, that's so expensive too. I always forget how expensive the cushion is. Oh,
So
you're
expensive.
right. Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And now Scout, finish us off.
All right. So again, the thing I like about these slides is just that, thinking about the aftercare and thinking about like what can happen during sex. Like it can be messy, and it's all just part of it. You might have to urinate, in the middle. So having a portable urinal might be helpful. Depending on what your needs are and how long your activities are, you might need snacks in the middle or snacks in the end. And also thinking about just comfort. We talked a lot in the beginning about, being comfortable in your space so that you can really be present in the moment. And maybe that's a diffuser so that you have good, comforting smells while you're engaging in intimate acts, or making sure your heating and cooling is not distracting you. We could go into all the ways you can control your heating and cooling, but that'll be for a different day. But just keeping all the things. Nobody wants to get overheated and have some kind of stress due to that. So, a fan is a great way to keep the air moving and keep you cool. All right.
Exactly. And especially if, you are a person that maybe has trouble regulating your body temperature, to ensure that there is air conditioning nearby, or heating if that is the case, if you run cold, as well. So we just have a small discussion question. Clearly this is a YouTube video, so I think just think about it. I don't know. Yeah, it's a YouTube video. Think about this discussion question that we're about to ask. The image on the screen representing discussion is a group of 5 people who are disabled, and they're all talking to each other and they're laughing, and there's a city landscape in the background, and it's really, really, really cute. But the discussion question we have for you all is, how can assistive technology provide dignity, respect, and autonomy in this conversation of sex and disability? I think it's really important to consider not only like, is this providing us independence? Does this have a functional purpose? Like, yes. And we have talked at length about that. But reflecting now with yourself, how can we also have assistive technology in sex provide dignity, respect, and autonomy for ourselves and our sexual pleasure? The image on the screen is of 2 people drinking some tea or coffee, some warm beverage in a mug, and chatting on a couch. So I hope you're enjoying a tea or coffee or something, chatting about how assistive tech can provide dignity, respect, and autonomy in sex and disability.
All right. And if you have any questions or comments and you would like to reach out to either Tom or I, or just check out our respective programs, we have our phone numbers, the email for our agencies, ours, our websites, and there is a chat icon on Tom's website. So I'm not going to read all this information. No, I'm going to do a cutout unless you think it's important. Tom?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay. All right. So back in. All right, so feel free to reach out to either one of us or our program agencies, or to your local agency.
Dang, you're gonna have to repeat that. I'm so sorry. I have to mute myself.
What's that?
Can you hear the phone ringing?
Oh, I didn't.
I need 2 more rings and I'm done.
All right, so feel free to reach out to either Tom or I, or our respective agencies, Missouri Assistive Technology or Tech Owl, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Or your local IL center will also be there for you. Okay.
Great. And lastly, I think it's important not just contacting us via our company phone or email, but know that you can reach out to us on social media. I run the Tech Owl PA social media account, so please feel welcome to follow us on any platform. We are on all platforms. I post videos on TikTok and Instagram Reels all the time regarding assistive technologies, disability justice, disability rights. So please, and I respond to DMs very quickly. So at Tech Owl PA is our handle, and Scout's handle is at Missouri AT. Are you on all of the platforms?
We are not on all of them, and we are not nearly as active as Tech Owl, but we are on Facebook and Twitter, at least.
If you want to talk to Scout, you could just reach out to me on Tech Owl. I know Scout, and I'll talk to him for you. Because I'm all over, because I'm extra. We also wanted to end this presentation with a few resources. We think it's really, really important to understand that there are so many resources out there. I have a Pennsylvania specific one to start off. It's called PCAR, Pennsylvania's Coalition Against Rape. However, the National Sexual Assault Hotline is the national version of that. There is the crisis text line. So you text home to 741-741, or you can go to their website. There is the National Deaf Domestic Violence Hotline to consider as well as a resource. And disability rights, I have Disability Rights PA linked here. However, disability rights is a national organization. Every state has disability rights. Again, 2 LGBTQIA plus supports organizations specifically to the queer community is the Trevor Project, which is mostly for young queer lives, as well as the Trans Lifeline. We also used a lot of academic resources to cultivate this knowledge and understanding for you all. So here are some of the studies that we referenced to create the information for this conversation for you all today, as well as many links to devices and podcasts and other resources. I thank you all so much for attending this presentation. We have a QR code to a survey on the screen. In the description as well, we will have the survey there. If you made it to the end, we would love to hear your feedback, your honest feedback about this presentation. And the title of the presentation is AT and Sex. My name is Tom. My partner's name is Scout. And we thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful day.